happen. All right, Zach, you want to talk about Ohio State, Texas?
Nah, who cares about that game? Yes, let's
Well,
do it.
too bad. We're doing it anyway. Ohio State is favored by 5.5 over Texas. The over-under in this game is 53.5. Ohio State obviously has looked very impressive in their 2 playoff games so far against Tennessee at home and then Oregon on the road in the Rose Bowl, which felt like more of a home game. Would you agree there were more Oregon fans there than Ohio State fans?
It wasn't that pronounced. I'd say probably 6. It's funny. I texted you early on. I'm like, there's a lot of Oregon fans here. It really turned out to probably 60-40 or 55-45. It wasn't that big of a disparity.
Maybe Ohio State fans just got there late. They didn't want to pay for as much hotel.
Yeah. Did we make it?
Yeah. Well, apparently Ohio State has sold out its allotment for this Texas game, so I know there's a number of people concerned about that, but I think that this should be a fairly even crowd for Ohio State, Texas again. And when I say fairly even, I mean somewhere in between like 60-40 or something like that. I don't think Ohio State will be the predominant crowd in Texas against Texas. But yeah, overall, like this is a very interesting game, right? You have Texas, who has Quinn Ewers, who was such a highly rated prospect. Quinn Ewers, who actually spent a year, not even a year, like 4 or 5 months at Ohio State, with him coming in the summer for joining the team, and then he left like that December. So like I said, like 5-6 months maybe with Ohio State for that time. He transfers to Texas, gets the starting role right away, and then from there, this Texas team you thought was going to have the best offense. You had Steve Sarkisian, you had Quinn Ewers, and they've had very good offenses, don't get me wrong, but I would say that they've underwhelmed a little bit, and I'm surprised that a Steve Sarkisian team is so led by the defense, right? I mean, this Texas team is led by the defense. Now, they did give up a 16-point lead to Arizona State, but I give a lot of credit to Arizona State in that one and just how much they tired out Texas's defense and how much they kept going after them. But this Texas defense and this Ohio State defense is going to battle here for who is the best defense in the country in my mind. I give the edge to Ohio State because I believe they faced better competition. But Zach, let me ask you this. Which defense do you think is better? And then what are your thoughts on the game?
So I'm going to go to hypothetical land for a minute, and then I'll bring us back to reality.
Okay.
Because the SEC loves to deal in hypothetical, right? So,
and the SEC will win the hypothetical portion of the
all the time
preview.
But here's the reason why I want to do this is I think if you were to break this down from like NCAA college football 25 ratings of every player, and you simulated it, I think they're almost dead even. And I would say Texas, I think in some ways you could say is even better than Ohio State. And I think that's not just true defensively. I think that's true on offense too. Yeah. I think their secondary is really, really good. Barron, the Thorpe Award winner, is a really good corner.
This is the best safety matchup of the season.
Yes.
Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom versus Barron and I forget the other safety's name. I apologize.
Makuba.
That's right.
Yeah.
I knew it was something kind of funny.
Yeah.
I like that name. Makuba.
Yeah. Well, Taff and Makuba are the safeties. Barron's right. the corner. Makuba, he's transferred in from Clemson.
Yeah.
They're good on every level of defense. Like Anthony Hill, stud linebacker. Simmons, who won Freshman of the Year in the country, coming off the edge. Like their defensive line's legit. And so if you're just looking at pure talent, I'm like, yeah, I think Texas, like I think they're dead even. If I look at what they've actually done, and this is going to be a trend in how I break down this game, the way Ohio State's played the past 2 weeks, there's not a defense that matches them in the country. And it's by far. Like I thought Texas struggled in the pass game against Clemson. And while I think Klubnik and those receivers are good, they don't present anything like what Ohio State presents with the receivers and the running backs. I thought I thought ASU bullied them a little bit, especially in the second half. And not that I want Ohio State to go bully ball, because we all know what happens when that happens. Um, they have shown that against good teams, there are cracks in that defense, which is hard to understand because this is how I would then speak about Texas. I feel like Texas is Ohio State pre-Michigan, where the defense is good, they're rock solid, and they have some wow plays. But I'm like, when are they going to get it really together? Whereas Ohio State's gotten it together. And the way that they're deploying downs kind of in the middle of that defense, I mean, it's a game changer. Mm-hmm. I mean, and
when you hear people describe this defense, you're hearing people say like, "Oh, this is a 4-2-5, 3 high safety check, round robin, this, that, and the other." It's like they have to have like 4 or 5 terms in there because Jim Knowles is putting so many different things together to make this defense what it is. And I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of, in particular Tennessee and Oregon are having such a hard time with it, because you're correct. Ohio State has moved their safety, Caleb Downs, down to more of a hybrid safety linebacker role, and it has completely changed the defense for the better.
Yeah. And then what it's done is it's unleashed, it's allowed them to play aggressive but almost safe on the back end. And so guys aren't open, and it's allowing that front to get pressure just with 4. Which then, so I look at at both defenses. I think Ohio State's defense is playing far superior. And I don't mean just from a schematic standpoint either. They are laying the wood. I mean, they are hurting people. Like Jordan James went out of that game early.
Yeah.
Lathan Ransom was trucking that dude. And I mean, again, I was at the stadium. You could hear it on the TV. You could hear it live, how hard they were hitting. And that's been the case against Tennessee, against Oregon. And so for me, the key is, does Ohio State continue to play and escalate? And can Texas kind of get to that level? Because they can. Like, I think Texas, out of any team in this tournament, has the talent. I think we both said Ohio State and Oregon, I think, are the 2 best teams. But Texas can get there. And that's the problem as I think about this game, is I'm like, Texas can get there, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've listened to a couple Texas podcasts, and I've watched a couple Texas games just because we had the time. Fortunately, we did not have a preview just the day after. Sometimes I don't always get to do as much research as I'd like with us doing previews on Sundays, sometime or on Tuesdays, with only a couple days. But we've had more time, so I appreciate that I was able to do that. And what I've noticed from this Texas team is they do get tired. Which is interesting because they do play like 6 or 7 deep on their defensive line. You wouldn't think they would get so tired, but they do. Oftentimes in late game situations, they're kind of running with the same guys, and so it does make them a little bit more tired. I think that the safeties are a huge part of this defense. Obviously, they're one of the best safety duos in the nation. But you also see them having to take on so many responsibilities. I think Chip Kelly is going to figure out where are the safeties, and that's how I will attack this defense. That will ultimately come down to then the pass rush and the run defense from the Texas defensive line. I mean, this has pretty much been the talking point for Ohio State in the playoffs every single time, and it's every single time because it really is what will lead this team to victory or not. Can the offensive line hold up? One of the reasons why Ohio State is hitting the deep balls against Oregon and Tennessee that they were not able to hit against Michigan is because the offensive line has been holding up. The middle of that offensive line was caving in, Anytime they ran the ball, anytime they passed the ball against Michigan, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant were on another level, and they're already first round picks. If Texas can't get pressure up the middle and completely cave in the offensive line, like 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 Michigan did, you don't see really a path for them to stop this Ohio State offense, because if you let Jeremiah Smith run down the field, he will get open eventually, and Will Howard will find him. Even if he's not open, Will Howard will just throw it up there, and Jeremiah
Yep.
Smith will go up and get it. Jeremiah Smith is turning into the best wide receiver in all of college football right now. And I'm not trying to sound like a homer saying that. I'm
No.
genuinely saying there are not many guys who can go into double coverage, jump up multiple times this season, and catch the ball with one hand or two hands. I mean, there's just not really anybody else in college football that can do that. That also has his speed, his size, and everything else.
Yep.
On the flip side, from watching Texas this year, the biggest thing I've come away with, obviously on the offensive side of the ball, is they do struggle to run the ball if they're going up against a good run defense. But also with Quinn Ewers, what I wasn't expecting to see that I did see more of is that he really is not able to create. He is
Mm-hmm.
much more of I don't think it makes him a game manager, but I just, from what I saw, if the play design is not working, Quinn Ewers will most likely get sacked or panic and make a bad decision. One of those
Yep.
two things oftentimes happens. Now, that does not happen very often because Steve Sarkisian really is a genius when it comes to offense, and he has some of the best, play calling out there. But he also is a head coach who's trying to manage that, and Ohio State fans know how head coach trying to manage play calling and head coaching responsibilities can be a difficult thing. So I say all this to say that Ohio State on defense, if they can confuse Steve Sarkisian and get Quinn Ewers off what the game plan is, Ohio State's defense will keep Texas to less than 17 points in this
Mm-hmm.
game. If they cannot do that and Steve Sarkisian can really dial some stuff up, I could see Texas scoring 28, but without a really good run game, I don't think you're going to score more than 28 on this Ohio State defense. So for me, if Ohio State gets 30 in this game, that's enough. I don't think that's a guarantee, but I do think it's likely based off the Ohio State offense that we've seen.
Yep.
So my score prediction overall will be not a blowout, but a bigger win for Ohio State. I think it will remain close for a good amount of the game. I don't think Ohio State will come out and have the offensive explosion that we've seen where they just get up 34 to nothing. I do think you'll see some good offense from Ohio State, so they will be up, and I think Texas will kind of hang around with them, but I think eventually Ohio State will pull away, and Ohio State will win this one 31 to 17.
Man, do you know how close our scores are?
What do you got?
31-16.
How did they get to 16? What's your thought process there?
I just don't. I think they're going to struggle to score in the red zone,
Okay.
and I
Yeah,
think
that
it'll
makes
be
sense.
like I could see it like 13-10 at half, like Ohio State trailing. Because here's my question for you, JR. Out of all the defensive lines that they've faced, like who do you think? How would you rank them? Like, but Michigan, Tennessee, Texas, Oregon, Penn State. Like, how would you rank those five defensive lines
Okay, so
that they
Oregon, Penn
faced?
State, Texas, and who else?
Tennessee and Penn State.
Um, oh boy. Um, I would say from playing them, I mean, I do hold Oregon in high regard because of what they were able to do in that first game, but they did nothing in the second game. So that's really hard to try and engage there. We haven't faced Texas yet, but I tend to believe Texas is the best just because of how much depth they have. But I also said Tennessee was one of the best defensive lines in the nation, and then we played them, and it was like, well, they're not really all that good.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where like I hold Texas in higher regard, but if I watch Texas defensive line do nothing against Ohio State, then I'll be like, well, yeah, they weren't all that good. So I think at the end of the day, I think Michigan's is the best defensive line in all of college football, or one of the best in all of college football. I think
Yeah.
Ohio State is the best with the way they're playing right now, but I don't think they showed that all season. I don't think I would have Ohio State fans argue with me on that. Like I said, right now they're the best. All season long, they didn't show they were the best. I think next after them would probably be Penn State, just because of what Abdul Carter brings. I would have said Tennessee, but James Pierce Jr. did not show me anything in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the first round pick, big guy, that was going to kind of star that defensive line. He didn't do anything for him. So I'm actually going to put Tennessee last.
Yeah.
So I'll go Michigan, Penn State, Texas, just kind of neutral on them because we haven't faced them yet. Oregon, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. So a couple things. One, I think Donovan Jackson might be the unsung hero of Ohio State. The way he's played at left tackle.
Yeah.
He moved over like zero pressures against Oregon, and they had Jordan Birch back. So like as much as people talk about Evan Stewart being out and Jordan James getting knocked out of the game, their defense was fully loaded and they looked like they had emptied the clip pregame.
Yeah.
I mean, they did not know what hit them. So here's my dilemma. And I already said my score 31-16, but here's my concern is that I do think Texas along the lines could give Ohio State problems. Like, I think this is hypothetically, again, keyword hypothetically, Texas's offensive line is the best offensive line they faced just from pure talent. Like Banks, Williams at the tackles, their center, like they're all top 3 round grades. Banks is probably the best offensive tackle in the draft. Williams is probably a first round tackle. The center is probably a top 3 round guy. So like really, really good offensive line personnel. But again, in the games that have mattered, they haven't shown it. Like against Georgia, the first time against Georgia at home, and they had their whole line healthy, I believe. They looked awful. And it's like, what in the world? And so my question is, okay, will the real Texas stand up? And
that was the same question that Ohio State had at the beginning of the playoffs.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and so that's my dilemma is I think there is something on the table where Texas wakes up and they play to their talent level and they can beat Ohio State. Like, I think that's very much on the table. And if they give Ewers time and they can turn over Will Howard, like, I think Texas can win. I think they could win big. But
I mean, it would take a collapse by Ohio State for Texas to win big. Here's where I'm at with this Ohio State team, and I know everybody is picking, pretty much everybody is picking Ohio State to win big, and I believe Ohio State will win by more than one score. But, and I was talking with a buddy about this the other day, like Ohio State could simultaneously be remembered as, if they win the national championship, they could be remembered as having the ceiling as one of the best to ever win a national championship in the college football playoff era, and then also having the floor of one of the worst. Because that's what they have shown this season. Against Michigan, they showed one of the worst performances of a national title contender that we've seen in the college football playoff era. And then against Oregon, you saw one of the best in the college football playoff era. So it's this crazy dichotomy where at the end of the day, Ohio State has what I believe is the most talented roster in college football.
Yep.
But do they have the coaches who are putting them in the best position to do that? I believe they do now. But I also thought they were doing a good job going into the Michigan game. So I think what it comes down to is I think Ryan Day just has a Michigan problem. I think that he is aggressive, and I think Chip Kelly is helping him be aggressive in these playoff games. That's why I feel confident in Ohio State to win the game. But if they come out and Ohio State loses this game 17-10, I would not be surprised at all. If the defense shows up but the offense does not show up, I would not be surprised at all. I would hate it, but I would come back and I would say, yeah, that's what we saw against Michigan, and it happened again.
Yep. Yeah. And I think of all the teams that they could face, this is the one team that could make them pay for that.
Right.
So
And I agree with you, Mr. Bucknuts. He says doubt it, Natty on the line. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to happen.
yeah,
Like I said, it has the possibility of
yeah,
happening. That's how Texas wins, is Ohio State beats themselves.
yeah,
And I know that's a huge homer take, but I don't see how
yeah.
how
Well,
Texas wins other than that.
the one pushback I would use, if Texas can turn it on like Ohio State, they have the personnel to do it. And now, that being said, and this is why I'm going Ohio State 30 by double digits. Texas has not seen personnel like Ohio State's all year. Like particularly the offense. They have not faced a good offense. Yeah, we talked about Notre Dame not facing a good offense. Texas has not faced a good offense at all.
Right.
Like Georgia is probably the best offense they've faced. Woof. Like,
yeah. And that's the other thing that I look to with all of this is Ohio State has been battle tested this season. You can say whatever you want about Indiana and everything else. The truth is Indiana won a lot of games this season, and they lost to Ohio State by a lot of points when they were at peak confidence, right? You can say all you want about James Franklin and Penn State and everything. The truth is that in the semifinals and the Final Four, Penn State is there, and Ohio State beat them earlier this season. You can say all you want about the rest and everything else about Oregon, but the fact is that Oregon was the best team in college football in the regular season, and Ohio State trounced them. I mean,
yep.
Ohio State is the most battle-tested team that's left in the playoffs, and Texas is probably the least.
Yep. Yeah.
So
agreed.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. Let's see some of the other people's scores. Hold on really fast. Tyler has a question. He says, Zach, do you think they can keep up with us offensively from what you've seen? I don't think so. I think he's asking if they get into a shootout, if Texas could keep up with Ohio State offensively.
The one way is if that offensive line plays up to their potential. Because if they can run the ball and they can do play action.
Do that against Clemson, but Clemson's also a bad run defense.
Awful. Yeah. But and again, it's a lot of ifs. I think Bootzilla was like, it's a lot of ifs. It is a lot of ifs. But
right.
Again, I think Texas, the high end of Texas is good enough to beat Ohio State. The problem is we have not seen it all year. And right. I think that's where we've seen the high end of Ohio State now. But I think if they played to their potential, they have really good receivers in Bond and Bolden. What's the other guy? Their number one receiver. They have Trey.
They have Bonds, Bolden, Wingo,
Ryan Wingo, and their running backs. It's their fourth and fifth string, but they have been serviceable. And if their offensive line blocks, they can do some business there. They have a good tight end in Gunnar Helm. The issue though is they have not, and we saw it against Arizona State. They have not played like it. Arizona State's good, but they're a top 10, 12 team. They're not an elite team. Mm-hmm. And honestly, Texas is lucky that they had special teams in their favor. And even that wasn't in their favor late in the game because of the missed kicks. But yeah. At the end of the day, potentially, hypothetically, yes. But realistically, unless they turn it on, no.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Texas's best could beat Ohio State, but I also think if Ohio State is at their best, nobody's beating them.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, again, that could be a homer take, but that's what I think. David Greenshield is here. He says, hey, guys. Hey, David. We're about at the end of the show, but we appreciate you being here. Put your score prediction in the chat, David. I'm going to run through some people's score predictions here. If anybody else has a score prediction, please put it in the chat, and I'd love to see what you guys think. So Mr. Bucknuts says 34-17. OSU, me and Mr. Bucknuts are right there, and you as well, about the same. PSU Jim, 34-20. OSU wins it. PSU Jim's thinking like us. Philip says 48-7. OSU. Yeah, I will be far too confident if that happens. Tyler says 41-17 Bucks W. The thing is, Zach, I know sometimes fans will say this, like these kind of scores, kind of like trolling, like, yeah, we're going to kill you. It's not trolling. It really could happen. Ohio
Yeah.
State could win this game 41-17.
Yeah.
College football 360 says Ohio State 34 to Texas 24. That's also a possibility. I think that's a good thought process there. And then Troy V says Buckeyes squeak it out. 45
awesome.
to 13. Yeah,
Yeah.
just a little squeak out there.
Can I add one thing to that? What you just said.
One second. Let me get the rest of the predictions. John says 45-21. Bootzilla says 31-17. You're like me, Bootzilla. I like it. Doug says 38-13 Ohio State. Yes, what did you want to say, Zach?
So I've been trying to hold back the reins and give Texas a lot of chance to win because I do think they have the
preview
talent.
if we just came out here and said like, hey, Ohio State rocks, Texas sucks. Like,
yeah.
And trust me, I've watched some previews like that the past few days. They're not very fun.
No. But here's to your point about the 48-7 thing. The way Texas is playing right now and their strengths and weaknesses compared to Ohio State's strengths and weaknesses, I do think it's on the table that Ohio State shuts out Texas and it's like a 49-0 game. I don't think that'll happen. I think Texas has too much pride. And I think Texas, they're going to want to get up for this game. I really believe that. But if you look at how Ohio State's defense is constructed, it matches what Texas wants to do.
Right.
And if you look at Ohio State's offense, like I think Texas' defense is really good, but I also think I thought Oregon's defense was really good. And I mean, they made it the first 29 minutes of that game. Ohio State made Oregon look like Western Michigan. And I just don't, there is a potential for Texas to get overwhelmed because they have not seen anything like this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is what justifies the 41-17, the 48-7. And I know we did our preview on Texas, Arizona State, and something you said really got a whole lot of Texas fans all riled up because they said, there's no way Arizona State's even coming close within us, and we're going to destroy them. And, I was one that said 0 ranked wins, and they obviously took
offense to that.
Problem with that. And I'm sure there will be more Texas fans that watch this because we put our previews out as individual videos, and they will probably not like me saying, Texas, you've not played anybody this season until the playoffs. And even in the playoffs, you played Clemson, which was not all that good, and Arizona State, who was very motivated, but let's be honest, they should not have been anywhere near the talent level of what Texas is with how they've been able to recruit. And so at the end of the day, Texas is going to have to put together their absolute best performance they've seen all season. It's always possible, but and for the record, me doubting you does not mean Ohio State is doubting you.
Yeah. If Ohio State drinks the Kool-Aid, they will get beat. But I don't think they're drinking the Kool-Aid.
I can't imagine they're drinking the Kool-Aid. Vince says, how much does OSU have to be up for Texas to turn to Arch? 3 scores. I think if Ohio State goes up 3 scores, they'll go to Arch. I think they give Quinn 3 drives. If they don't score a single point, and a couple of those are 3 and outs, and Ohio State's up 21-0, 17-0, I think they go to Arch.
That's when the avalanche could happen, though.
I mean, because maybe Arch might be better.
I was reading some stuff on this. I think Arch, his tools might be better, but does he know the offense as well? Does he know when to check?
He's been there for 2 years. He should. It's not like he's a true freshman this year, but no, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. We've talked this game to death. Anything else? At this point, we're talking about what happens for the backup quarterback to get in
Yeah,
one of the
which
teams.
is it might be a little disrespectful. I want to put it out there. I think there's potential for a blowout for Ohio State, but I think if you're an Ohio State fan and you're like Texas has no shot, like just understand out of any team in the playoff, including Oregon, Texas has the talent to compete, but also it is not a good matchup for Texas.
Yeah, it's not. So I think you made good points. Good points. All right, and yes, Philip, I was not trying to disrespect Scattaboo. Which I don't even know. Is that how you spell his name? I've never been able to spell
It's
it.
I think there's an E in there
Okay, and I thought it was
somewhere.
like B-O. Maybe it is B-O-O. I don't know. Philip might have used the spell check. He might not have, or the spell check didn't help him at all. 'Cause it didn't work.